Welcome to Television Sydney News. I'm Alex Pleffer. It's great to have you with us. In this week's bulletin, a child prostitution ring revealed at Warwick Farm, a video of Fairfield High School students becomes a hit on YouTube, and all the action from the Sydney Writers' Festival. But first, a 53-year-old Northmead man has been arrested over his involvement in an alleged child prostitution ring. He was arrested after police searched a number of homes around Sydney in their investigations into the operation. Police arrested two Warwick Farm sisters in March and alleged they forced girls as young as 12 to have sex with men for money. The women were charged with promoting child prostitution, obtaining benefit from child prostitution and armed robbery. Police said the women may have forced up to 7 girls to work as prostitutes and may have charged as little as $10 for sex with them. Frustrated motorists caught in the M2 gridlock want a government toll cashback scheme. The M2 rakes in more than $4 million a week. The Hills Transport Working Group says it is a matter of fairness. Group Chairman James Fiander says Hills ratepayers are no different from other commuters who benefited from the previous M4 cashback scheme and who received the M5 rebate. A spokesman for Roads Minister Duncan Gay says the government is not considering the proposal. The Bringelly Public School community feels its fundraising efforts have been in vain. That's because the new $10,000 ride-on lawnmower, bought with the funds, has been stolen. The school owned the mower for only a couple of weeks before the padlocks on the shed were cut and the mower was stolen. Principal Cheryl Scott says the school community is crushed by the theft. A video featuring Fairfield High School's intensive English class has become a hit on YouTube, but for all the wrong reasons. The students made a 4-minute video called We Are the Class S1, which was a positive rap about their classmates, school and teacher. It showed students dancing on tables and chairs and caused quite an uproar in the cyber world. School principal Robert Mullas said the video was designed to build students' self-esteem.
Everyone who saw the video, initially the students in the class, the other students in the Intensive English Centre, the teachers in the Intensive English Centre, the school, everybody internal to the school loved it and has loved it, and the kids' self-esteem has risen, etc. People outside the school have seen it because a number of people in the Department of Education have seen it. Everyone praises. They praise the quality, they praise the content. The students look fabulous and fantastic, and it's a very slick production. So it was a very, very magnificent thing to watch, and it was a high for the school.
Mr Mullas says the video is harmless and is a morale booster for the students.
The video has attracted more than 200,000 views since going viral on May 5, but it has now become the subject of ridicule, with students becoming the victims of cyberbullying as vile comments were posted online.
He says he's disappointed by the negative comments.
Quite frankly, I think a lot of people were really shocked initially because it's our school. The forum for discussion, the negative comments, were probably posted by a wide range of people. It initially was a very upsetting thing. The kids who did it, the S1 class, were very, very embarrassed. But the second turnaround internal to the school has actually been, no, this is something really positive, and they've returned back, the S1 class have returned back to those positive feelings.
Fairfield Constable Nathan McDonald says people should give some thought to what they post online. A southwestern Sydney mum is determined to help parents understand why teachers went on strike last week. Julia Matthews from Narellan Vale is organising a forum to help parents understand the state government's Local Schools Local Decisions program. She says teachers, principals, union representatives and politicians will speak at the forum.
There's just not knowing enough information. You know, we're hearing about teachers being put on as casuals. We're hearing that the principals are going to have more power. So we're just getting a lot of snippets of information. There's not a whole lot of information about what this will actually mean for the schools, and I think that's what parents want, is some transparency and some clarity on what it actually means, how it'll affect in the long term our kids going through a public school system.
Interested parents should contact Mrs Matthews to help organise a time and a place for the forum. It'll be held in the next few weeks in the Camden area. Parramatta Council's proposed Western Sydney Light Rail network has polarised the community. Jim Donovan from Action for Public Transport says the proposal is trash, as the light rail network would be expensive and not relevant. He says there needs to be a greater investment in buses connecting Western Sydney business centres. Parramatta Chamber of Commerce Vice President Roger Byrne says he supports the proposal, but he says light rail is not a total solution to the area's infrastructure problems and a combination of transport options should be considered. Angela Patterson's Mayan Cafe will be demolished if Parramatta Council succeeds in building 2 towers in Civic Place. But Ms Patterson accepts something has to be done. One of the buildings proposed for Civic Place will be a 55-storey residential tower on the corner of Darcy and Church Streets. The other would be a 20-storey commercial building on the corner of Smith and Macquarie Streets. The council's private partners for the planned $1.6 billion urban renewal project, Grocon, pulled out of their agreement in March. Residents are strongly opposing a plan for a 100-hectare industrial and employment estate in Horsley Park. Jack Finn submitted a concept plan for the $479 million estate to the Department of Planning and Infrastructure late last year. Residents say they are devastated by the proposal, which would destroy the area's rural residential integrity. And residents in the Hills will now be able to book doctor's appointments online. 2 medical centres in the Hills are among the first 6 general practices in New South Wales to offer patients this service. Cherrybrook Medical Centre and Family-Wise Medical Practice at Castle Hill have welcomed the new online medical directory Health Engine. Owner of Family-Wise, Sonny Yee, says the site was also an easy way for a medical practice to have a web presence. Angel Gonzalez has been fighting for an Australian visa for his sister in Chile for more than 2 years, and finally he's getting some community support in his battle with the Department of Immigration. Mr Gonzalez's application was rejected because his sister is a kidney transplant recipient, but the Currans Hill resident says he has private insurance cover for his sister and is happy to sign a declaration that he'll pay her medical costs. He wants the Immigration Minister to intervene. 2 university students have works in this year's Vivid Sydney Festival. Hurstville's William Chan has made an illuminated sculpture about the need to address issues surrounding urbanisation in our cities, and Sutherland's Luke Hespinol has helped create an interactive light exhibition that features 12 dandelion-style lights. More than 60 sculptures, projections and lights will be displayed at the Sydney Opera House, Museum of Contemporary Art, Circular Quay and The Rocks until June 11. Residents' calls for noise barriers near a freight line in Casula have fallen on deaf ears for nearly 5 years. Stephen Simmons says the new freight line will operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Australian Rail Track Corporation, which is building the line, has refused to provide barriers because it says the noise will not be much more than the current levels generated by the passenger railway line. Authors from around the world descended on Sydney last week for the country's biggest writing festival. More than 300 events took place over 4 days, involving writers, would-be writers and avid readers. And everyone had a story to share, including scientist Carl Krasinski and journalist Peter Fitzsimons, who made appearances in Western Sydney to discuss their latest books.
Hundreds of people turned up here at Penrith City Library this evening as part of this year's Sydney Writers' Festival. They were taken on an adventure through the Antarctic by Australia's biggest-selling non-fiction author and journalist, Peter Fitzsimons, as he discussed his latest book, Mawson.
The book follows in the footsteps of some of Australia's most renowned Antarctic explorers, including Sir Douglas Mawson. Dr Krasinski also made an appearance at the library on Friday to speak about his latest book, Brain Food, that looks at how the human body deals with what it eats. Penrith Mayor Greg Davies said the non-fiction writers could have expected an enthusiastic audience for the library's 9th Sydney Writers' Festival. And meeting with a delighted audience, they certainly did.
Marvellous. I wish there was one on every night of the week.
It's easy to get to and from, home to be in bed before I turn into a pumpkin and get up for work the next morning.
The problem is a lot of people don't know there's anything west of probably Glebe, but we are west of Glebe and there's other places like us too. And it's good.
What do you think, Bubby? No.
Young and old, intrigue and ethics have come to the heart of Sydney's West as hundreds of people flocked here to Parramatta's Riverside Theatres for Sydney Writers' Festival. Young poets from Liverpool, Blacktown and Parramatta battled it out in the Rumble, a poetry slam featuring ARIA nominee MC Trey and Australia's spoken word tour de force, Miles Merrill. 3 slam teams represented their communities in the competition, with a trip for Melbourne up for grabs to battle it out with Victoria's slam champions. Also on the program was No More Nuremberg Defence, where former CIA member turned author Glenn Carl talked to Aussie author Elizabeth Winhausen about the ethical battle of duty versus the moral code of obeying orders. Carl was a high-ranking CIA interrogator who refused orders to get information out of Al-Qaeda subjects, which ultimately resulted in his resignation. The week-long celebration of literature and ideas wound up on May 20, but School Days, the festival's program for children, continued to Friday. This is Christina Pollard for Television Sydney News.
Greater Western Sydney Giants officially have a new home. The team had their first training session at the Skoda Stadium after it was opened this week. They play their first game at the stadium against Essendon on Saturday.
A month ago, 5,000 head of cattle were stampeding through the middle of this arena. This is an exciting day for the Greater Western Sydney Giants. In just a few minutes from now, our young players will make their way onto the Skoda Stadium for their first official training run. It is a magnificent stadium, a stadium that boasts state-of-the-art facilities and offers a wonderful experience for all fans, as well as the very best in corporate hospitality. The redevelopment of this stadium would not have been possible without the support of a number of key people. First, I want to thank the Premier Barry O'Farrell and his Sports Minister Graham Annesley for their investment in this major infrastructure project for Sydney Olympic Park and for the people of Western Sydney.
Giants coach Kevin Sheedy will come up against his old club, the Bombers, for the first time. Despite winning 4 premierships with the Bombers, Sheedy will be hoping his young side can contain the likes of stars Alwyn Davey and Dustin Fletcher. Castle Hill RSL Youth Club gymnastic team won 3 gold medals at the 2012 Australian Gymnastics Championships. 11-year-old Samantha Pace and Hannah Tam and 12-year-old Fiona Wallace were able to twist and turn their way to gold medals for a New South Wales team event.
To have qualified to get here today, the gymnasts need to have obtained a qualifying score. So yeah, this is the cream of the crop that's here today, and the girls for today's competition, the IDP 6 athletes from Castle Hill have just competed in their second day of competition, so they've just done their all-around and team competition.
Wallace won first place in the individual floor event, and Tam took home the gold in the individual beam with a score of 14.55. The club has 19 other members competing during the championships, which will run until the 2nd of June. One of Fairfield's favourite sons has returned home. Tony Popovich, who grew up in Fairfield West, has been named the inaugural coach of the Western Sydney A-League team. He spent last weekend watching local Premier League teams Sydney United, Marconi and Bonnie Rigg as he begins the long journey of building a new franchise. The former Socceroo says people in Western Sydney are hard workers, and he will expect that to be reflected in the new team. Tamworth's Sharon Horner has taken out the Australian Natural Bodybuilding South Coast Overall Figure Champion title. She says training like an animal, eating like a cavewoman and sleeping like a baby is part of her routine. She will now compete in the Asia Pacific International Competition. Fellow competitor Diane Tanner took 3rd place in her first bodybuilding competition in the Women's Open Physique class. Tanner lost 35 kilograms in the past year in preparation for the event. And actor-turned-producer Michael Winchester plonked a bath in the middle of Parramatta this month. It was a ploy to draw attention to the premiere of his film, Bathing Frankie, premiering at Riverside Theatres on Saturday.
The idea for the story came from a character that I observed in my local hometown up in the Hunter Valley. And I wondered about this character because he was obviously, he spent a lot of time on the streets. He didn't wear the same kind of clothes as everybody else, and I wondered about what his story might be.
He says it tells the story of Steve, played by Sean Goss, who, as a condition of his parole, delivers Meals on Wheels to Rodney, played by mother and sons Henry Zepps, and his ageing mother Frankie, played by Fat Pizza's Maria Venuti. Winchester says Rodney invents an elaborate world of make-believe to cope with being his mother's full-time carer. The film's distribution company, Titan View, will bring the Indie Gems Film Festival to the theatres in late July. And that's all we have time for here at Television Sydney News. For more information, pick up your local Fairfax newspaper. This is Alex Pleffer. I'll see you next time.